Welcome to The Jungle, a podcast brought to you by Liger Partners, where we dive into the entrepreneurial journey, the entrepreneurial story. And today I'm super excited to have Travis Klavohn with me.
Yes, glad to be here.
Welcome, Travis.
Thank you.
So Travis is managing partner with Klavohn Employee Benefits.
Yes.
And this is going to be a fun conversation. We've already been touching on some topics that we're going to cover. So if employee benefits burned your ears when you first heard that, stay tuned because we're going to dive into way more than that. Yes. And how it's impacting you if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, thinking about maybe you're a solo entrepreneur, but you want to add team members. This is all stuff that you have to take into consideration. So before we get into that, how in the world did you get into insurance, Travis?
Well, the way that I got into insurance is as an undergraduate, First of all, I supported myself in college by learning a trade first. I was a carpenter.
Okay.
And I did an apprenticeship in Columbia, South Carolina, and that allowed me to pay a portion of my my college.
Yeah.
But when I finished undergraduate, I did what most people do. I went through interviews on campus, and Aetna Insurance Company gave me a really great opportunity right out of college.
Okay.
To give me a career path into that. And as a result, I learned health insurance and all of employee benefits from really the ground up.
Okay, great. So you did that for a while.
I did.
And then you decided you wanted to go out and do your own business.
Yes. Well, for 27 years, I worked my way up in the corporate world.
Okay.
I worked in various aspects of employee benefits, from insurance to data analytics to consulting, and I had some of the largest employers in the world as clients. About 2.5 years ago, I realized that small business owners that I know here in Atlanta, friends and family, we're not really getting the best advice on their employee benefits. And a lot of reasons why that's happening, and I won't bore you with the details, but essentially they asked me for help and I helped them. And at the end of that, they said, well, why don't you just be our insurance broker? And I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. And as a result of that, I have been able to build a business with friends and family and created a great network of small business owners here in Atlanta that are my clients. I have a 5-star rating on Google Business, which I'm very proud of.
Nice. Yes, that's great.
And one of the things that is very unique at this point in time in the business is that on average, I am giving my clients decreases on their health insurance premium. And in 27 years in the business, I just really haven't experienced that often. So it's a fun time for our business, and it's a fun time to be a small business owner in Atlanta.
Yeah. And you really did it the perfect way, right? You already had people telling you what they wanted, so you didn't just blindly jump off a cliff and say, I'm going to start my own business. You had these people you just ought to do this on your own.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have support from people out there in the community.
Yeah.
And people who believe in what you do. But also, we're in a very unique time in our nation's history and also the economy, with a very strong economy and very low unemployment. Mm-hmm. It's really putting pressures on small business owners to do things creatively to attract and retain employees in a very competitive environment. And I'm very glad that I'm in a position that I can help do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know that we're going to dive into that really kind of quickly, though. I want to know what was one of the greatest struggles when you first started your own business?
Oh my goodness. Where do I even start? So when
Sure, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. So when you're in a big corporation, you take all kinds of things for granted. Number one is you take your employee benefits package for granted.
Right.
Things like a 401k and health insurance for your family, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, of course, when you have to go out on your own, you have to solve that. You have to take care of your business for your family first. That's the most important thing. But then secondly, there's a whole new other level of services that you get from a corporation. Well, you take for granted that you have a marketing department, and you have to seek out partners like Liger Partners to fit that role. But you also have IT help, people that assist you with selecting the laptop that you would use, the operating
Yes.
system, and the technology that you would need to support your business.
Yes.
And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Payroll is another area, bookkeeping, all of these services that a corporate person experiences just because they work for a big corporation, you take for granted, and you have to replace those in some form or fashion when you're a small business owner.
Right. Call that the University of Google. I'm over here like, how do I connect my email to my phone?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to Google it because the IT department's not there to help you through that. So
That's true.
All right. Well, what's one of the benefits? What's something that you didn't expect when you set out and started your own business?
Freedom.
Okay.
I mean, I can do anything that I want.
Nice.
And,
Okay.
There's no board to answer to. I answer solely to my clients,
Yeah.
and I do things that are in their best interest.
Yeah.
Now that comes with a certain amount of responsibility,
Right.
because I'm a firm believer that you can't just take a product and just sell it to people.
Sure.
You can't push things on people. Things that they don't want. So what that required me to do is really listen to clients and figure out what their needs were. And what I found, by and large, is that small business owners have a lot of the same challenges that I had when I started my business. Where's the IT guy? How do I do bookkeeping? How do I do payroll? What's the best way to implement these new processes for my business that I now own? And as a result of that learning, it allowed me to shape my business. And I'm proud to announce this morning that we're expanding. So in addition to employee benefits, we handle payroll, bookkeeping,
Very nice.
HR outsourcing, and
Okay.
really all of those general business services that a small business owner has, we do all in one shop. And there's all kinds of synergies that happen when you have all
Sure.
those services in one shop.
Sure. And I heard you telling producer Isaac when we came in that you've just moved into office space in Roswell.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
an old friend of mine and also a client approached me and said, we're heading in the same kind of direction. Why don't we merge organizations? So we did. And his side of the business is bookkeeping and payroll. And
Very nice.
So by merging those two, we're finding all kinds of synergies. So just for instance, if you're a business owner and you have this company doing payroll and this company doing your employee benefits and maybe you have bookkeeping over here, what happens if there's a problem on any of those processes? Well, what happens is that vendor calls the business owner, and the business owner has to get on the phone and call their other vendor and work through the problems, and it's a big hassle.
Right.
So what we found after like the first week being together, that boom, problem solved. The client doesn't even have to know that a problem even existed.
Right.
And that's the kind of synergy that we can bring by having all of those services in one shop.
Wow. And that's the best way to grow, right? To double your business. Clients will tell you what they want.
Yeah.
And then you really already got this trusted source. That's how we've added services at Liger and grown, right? Like we'll have people come to us for website or social media or PR, right? They come through one of the doors, but then they decide that they like us. Hey, by the way, do you also do this service? Absolutely, we do.
Of course.
Even if we don't, we do. It's the best way to go. We'll figure it out.
That's right. Well, that's true. So businesses have real problems, and oftentimes there's not an easy solution or an obvious solution.
Right.
And I think that one of the ways that you really differentiate yourself as a trusted advisor is finding solutions that don't necessarily already exist to those existing problems,
Right.
or do it in a different way.
Right.
And the organizations like yours and mine who are able to find those differentiating and higher value solutions are going to be the ones that are very successful.
Yeah. And we don't want to go anywhere else, right? It's why we shop at Target a lot. Me, my family. It's not the least expensive option, but I can get dishwashing detergent and food and items for the dog. And if we need a pair of clothing or something, right? Like it's all in one location. I don't have to go to Walmart and here and Ulta and all these different places. I can just get it all in one. So perfect. I love that. Okay. So with that and your expansion, something we were talking about before the mics went hot was this competition for talent. And so I know you and I were talking about that there's really two tracks to this. There's the one that because it really is the employee's market, if you will, they're looking for those extra things, right? They're more likely to take a job at this point because they can with an employer that's offering benefits and bonuses and various packages versus one who doesn't. But then there's also different ways of building that talent. So let's look first at, I'm an employer and I've got John over here, but there's 3 other companies competing for John. So what are some ways that I can stand out? How can I offer John things that maybe company A, B, C, D wouldn't be able to offer him?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to answer that, I think there are 3 critical areas where an employer could differentiate themselves to the employee. Number 1 is culture. And I would say everything falls under culture.
Yeah, love that.
Culture is everything.
Sure.
And culture is one of those things that's very hard to define, and it changes over time and the industry. But there are certain things that culture has in common. Number 1 is just the experience of the employees. What does it feel like to work there?
Yeah.
What other kind of employees are you going to work with? Are you going to like them? And I would say that in today's work environment, employers should never underestimate the value of fun. Fun and joy and enjoyment is one of the most powerful human emotions. And I think that it's one of the most productive human emotions. When I look at the things that I do and the time that I feel like I'm the most creative and the most productive, it's always been when I'm having the most fun serving clients or building things or whatever it might be. Fun in a culture is absolutely important.
Yeah. I would say that even can outweigh benefits as far as like health insurance,
I
right?
think absolutely. And health insurance, let's face it, is a very boring thing. But when you look at employee benefits and also how an employer pays their employees, well, that contributes to culture in some way. And there are lots of things that you can do with employee benefits and the communication of that to hit on certain values that reinforce the culture of an organization. And many employers in Atlanta that I work with, well, maybe they have new employees that are millennials coming out of college, and they have like different things that they value. And it's important that the benefits reflect the values and needs of those young employees. But also some employers may have very old workers who are nearing retirement, and what they value in their benefits are going to be very, very different. So the unique thing, because we have all of these different generations at work right now, the unique problem that I have at this point in time is designing benefits and compensation packages which meet the needs of all employees that have very different values, but build the culture of that organization.
Love that. All right, I took you off the track. Did you have point 2 and 3?
Oh, yeah.
Because I totally distracted you.
Pay and benefits.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Oh, but I will say that, you know, at some point, the financially minded business people need to think about what's the most efficient way to build culture and attract and retain employees. Well, because of the existing tax laws, it is still the case that benefits are the most efficient way to attract and retain employees. And it's because of the FICA tax. Most benefits are paid prior to payroll taxes.
Sure.
And so if nothing else, employers get a deduction on the taxes that they pay if they compensate employees through benefits versus other kinds of compensation.
Yeah. You know, as we were kind of walking through that, something that popped in my mind is, tell me what culture is, right? I feel like we use the word fun, but I also feel like a lot of times people picture a ping pong table, which isn't necessarily what we mean.
I don't think that's it.
So what is culture?
Well, yeah. So fun, in some organizations, in some industries, they will define that as like employees playing and not being productive.
Or sleep pods.
Yeah, sleep pods. I don't consider it that. I think real fun, real enjoyment with work is productive labor. Doing things that express your own inner values in your own mind, expressing that in the real world so that it meets some other person's need. And really that's it. It's service. It's having a purpose-driven life, as the preachers like to say.
Yeah.
But doing that in a way that allows your employment to express your own inner self in a way that serves humanity. And by the way, I mean, I'm a free market person when it comes to economy. Milton Friedman is like one of my heroes. Adam Smith is another. And what they would say is that ultimately the greatest way that we express ourselves in an economy is through applying our labor in a way to meet human need. And I think that's a good way to think about culture. So as an employer, if you want to create a culture, the way to do it is to think about the things that you do, the services that you offer to clients, and to connect those in a way that employees gain personal fulfillment through it.
Okay. So another thing that popped in my head, because I'm loving everything that you're saying, and you are unlike any other insurance or benefits individual I've spoken with. I know you talked about kind of small to medium-sized business. What does that look like for you? So if someone wants to work with you, what's a good size for you?
Well, I don't turn down any clients. Let's just say that.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So most of my experience has been in the large space, like the jumbos, the Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
But really here in Atlanta, and kind of where the point I am in my business, I like medium size and small business.
Okay.
And so I define that as really under 1,000 employees.
Okay.
But I'll tell you where the hot market for me right now is small business, 50 employees and less.
Okay.
And the reason why is because what's happened with Affordable Care Act and changes in the insurance markets and people that used to do what I do have left the market or sold it to some big corporation. And as a result, I'm finding there's a real need among small employers to be that trusted advisor, someone who's got a little gray hair and has been around for a quarter century doing this and knows a little bit about insurance, and that can just advise them and be their guide through a very complex and highly regulated market.
Right. Which is so refreshing. And I say all that I say because it does feel like, especially in the healthcare, if we want to dub it, realm, that a lot of individuals or companies move through that world just to make a buck, right? It's like, let's get you in, I'm going to give you information, let's onboard you, and then you kind of get passed off to the system, right? So I love that. Okay, so let's dive into talent.
Okay.
Travis is the Netflix star that you never knew of. He is Netflix famous. So we're going to talk about that, and you have an item here with you.
I do. It's my prop.
So Travis builds boats.
I do.
So tell us a story, and we're going to dive into like what all this means, because I promise you it's pertinent to this whole conversation we've had today. But to start off, so you built a boat and Netflix came along, purchased that boat, and it's in a show that's on Netflix. So walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to when I was an undergraduate and I was doing an apprenticeship in carpentry, it's just something that I really loved. And like I was never going to get very wealthy being a carpenter, that's for sure, but it paid the bills and got me through college. And I just really enjoy building things. And so I just continued practicing that trade, even through being a professional, being a corporate executive. So I brought this along. This is a tri-square. This is one of the tools that carpenters use.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But I did build several boats, actually, and the second boat that I built caught the eye of the prop guy at CBS Netflix, and I got a call out of the blue, and they wanted to buy one of my boats for the movies.
Nice.
And it was in Dynasty over the summer. It was the marquee episode where the two major characters got engaged, and they got engaged on my boat.
Nice.
And I just love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, it's not like a business or anything like that. I think I have a customer base of one, that being CBS Netflix. But
that's a nice customer, though.
It's a nice customer.
It's a great customer.
But it's just a very enjoyable thing. And it ties back into sort of my overall ideas about work. And as you build things, believe me, there's a lot of time to think about what you're doing and the implications of it when you're sanding for hours at a time. you have a lot of time to think about things.
Right, right.
So I brought this along. This is a tri-square, and I want to use this as an example of how practicing the trades, I think, is something much more than just trades.
Okay.
So a tri-square is one of the most important tools that a carpenter has. And there are lots of things you can do with a tri-square. Well, you have a straight edge, right? And you can measure things in inches and different increments of that. You have a right angle, and then if you turn it this way, you have a level. So what you can do is you can measure your work, and you can determine whether your work is a right angle or if you're really cutting a straight edge, or if you're cutting an inch off, is it really an inch? But there's something deeper going on here. And by using any tool like this, whether it's a level or a tri-square, what you're really doing is you're appealing to a truth beyond your own knowledge. And that is profound if you really think about it. Because what you're essentially doing is you're basing your actions on an assumption that there are limits to your own human knowledge. And you are assuming that there is a universal truth beyond your own experience. An inch is an inch. It doesn't matter who measures it.
Yeah.
And something is level or it's not. A straight edge is straight or it's not straight. And believe you me, when you're sailing a homemade boat in the Atlantic Ocean and you have whales coming up next to you, it really matters.
Right, yes. Yes, you would not want me to build a boat.
Absolutely.
I would need some guidance.
Yeah. So when I think about this and this idea that there's a universal truth beyond a person's own experience, well, when I think about that, what I see is an allegory for faith. I see an allegory for morality. And if you look at all the great faiths of the world, they all basically have in common that the individual has to appeal to an authority beyond their own experience for universal morality. That's what they all basically teach, and they do it in lots of different ways, but they have that in common. So I believe that practicing the trades is much more than doing a job. I think it's much more than being able to pay some bills through college.
Yeah.
I think it's ethical training. And if we really want to build a more moral society, we should have more people taking up the trades. I think we would be a better society. I think we'd have better individuals. And also, with tight labor market in construction, we'd have a lot of great workers.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of craftsmanship and trades.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I even think about too, the sheer fact of being able to complete something. So how long does it take to build a boat?
Surprisingly,
normally?
Not so much.
Okay.
Time. I can build a boat probably in about a month and a half, and I'm actually
It's still some dedication.
Yeah.
You've got to be getting in your workshop ever so often and doing things.
Oh yeah, I mean, you gotta like dust.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
but the actual process, it takes about a month and a half of calendar time, and I'm about to finish my fourth boat. But it's basically just a whole bunch of little steps.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard. It doesn't take a lot of skill, but along the way you hit certain challenges that you have to solve. And there are lots of ways now to look at YouTube, or there are forums you can go to get help on if you run into problems. But when you hit a problem, it's real interesting when you're working with the trades is that I feel that you're using more cognitive skills and more problem-solving skills than a lot of times that executives in big corporations use.
Yeah.
You're working with something that must work. You're working with something real, and then when you fix a problem, again, you're seeing the expression of your own standards that you hold for yourself in something real, and I think that's just a really cool thing.
So I know you said throughout college you were building things like this in construction. How did you get started in that? What inspired you to build?
Well, I come from a family of builders.
Okay.
So we had a general construction company when I was very young, and that supported our family. And then my first job was a laborer So digging ditches or footings for concrete pads. That's what I did, and I was a little bit more fit then, but got great muscles over the summer. Did that, and then some of the older guys on the crew took pity on me because I was the boss's son, and I seemed to get all the really bad jobs.
Nice.
And
okay.
So my dad made sure of that.
Yeah.
So some of the older guys took pity on me. They taught me the basics of carpentry, and by carpentry there I mean like putting up 2x4s to build a wooden wall.
Yeah.
And then from then I went on to fine carpentry, and then I did an apprenticeship for a furniture manufacturer in Columbia, South Carolina.
Nice. Okay.
And that's where I really learned to fine woodworking, things like mahogany and blending together of different woods and why you do that, what kind of joinery really holds it together. Even if the glue fails, the joints will hold the wood together.
Sure. Okay.
And as a result of that apprenticeship, I just had a real fascination with building things and handmade things.
Okay.
Beautiful design.
Yeah.
So when I see a beautiful logo or a beautiful brand, like Liger Partners, I love your lion.
Thank you.
And I just see that, I'm like, wow, I see the design, I see the symmetry, and I think it's beautiful. And, beautiful design is just, it really enhances everything, not just a brand, but just enjoyment of life.
Sure. Okay, I'm super curious about this. Tell me about a mistake that you've made when building something. So like, was it a boat and you got in it and it looked beautiful, but then you sat in it and it did one of these numbers?
Oh, of course. I mean, you don't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, right? Well, I've broken some eggs and I've built some bad boats.
Okay.
But the great thing about building a boat, a wooden boat, is if you make a mistake, it makes a great bonfire.
Oh, no. So you just have to scrap it? There's no, saving it?
Well, sometimes you can save it. But sometimes you reach a point where, honestly, there's
oh, no.
So building the hull is very important because it has to be shaped a certain way.
Right, yes.
So if you get to a point where you built the hull and you've made a mistake on, the calculations or something like that when you design it, or, your form bends or the wood warps. Wood's a very living thing, so it wants to move around. And if it's out of shape, you have to basically start over.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the people who do this for a living stick with fiberglass and molds. But absolutely. Yeah, there are plenty of times where I've made mistakes.
I would be so frustrated.
But you learn from it.
Yeah.
And I think that just like in business or any human endeavor, if it's worth doing, it's going to be hard.
Right.
And
True.
You're going to hit obstacles.
True.
And I think the thing that makes you either successful or not is, you can be intelligent, you can be goal oriented, you can be skilled, you can have resources at your disposal. But the most important thing, I think, is stick-to-itiveness. Yeah. You got to have something within you that pushes through those obstacles.
Right.
And if you do, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then maybe you need to work on your your own personality and your own character, because stick-to-itiveness is very, very important.
Yeah. I remember, and I have no clue what the name of the show is. And the only reason why I was watching this show is because I was traveling for business, and you were in the hotel room and you were like, I just need something to kind of relax the mind for a minute. And it's the show where they make knives. So it's and it's all different kinds of knives, right? Steeped in history. And so there's a certain amount of time, and these gentlemen have to make these knives. And I'm talking they get the raw materials and they have to make all of it, from the blade to the handle, everything. And then the knife is tested on various materials. So there's this, I don't say samurai, but gentleman that comes out, and he's throwing the knife to see if it sticks, and then he's slicing it into this pig carcass, right? Seeing if it cuts all the way through. And these men spent so much time making these knives, and it looked beautiful, and then it'd go to slice and just fall in half, and you could just see them crumble inside. And even I did that. I was I don't even know the first thing about this, but I felt so bad because there's so much time and effort and mental strength and sometimes literal blood, sweat, and tears that goes into something like that.
It is, but also it is. So whenever you create, part of the creative process is you take your emotions, and anyone who's creative, you ask an artist or a writer, they're putting a part of themselves into something that other people are going to judge. And so that just means you're exposing yourself, and you have a lot of emotions kind of built up in this thing that you're creating. And when it doesn't work or it doesn't meet your own standards, it's absolutely devastating. It really is. But on the other side of it is that when it actually works or it meets the need of someone, then it can be one of the most joyous things that you experience. And that is part of what I believe, back to culture and corporate culture. The great organizations take that part of the human experience and they somehow connect that into the work that and the mission of the organization.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Humans are emotional beings, and we're spiritual beings. And we want to have purpose. We want our lives to have meaning. And I think that connecting that meaning into productive labor for an organization is one of the greatest challenges, and it's what great leaders do. Great leaders do that. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about employee benefits. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about building boats, whether you're a student in a university or you're a politician running for office. It's connecting meaning into productive labor, I think, is one of the great challenges and what defines great leaders.
Yeah. So to summarize all this and kind of bring it home, if I'm an employer, is there a telltale sign, something I can look for, maybe a request of a project of when I'm interviewing an individual to know where maybe they have that edge, where there's maybe something? Because that wouldn't, that if you had not told me I build boats and this is the importance of it, I wouldn't have necessarily known that. So are there some telltale signs that we know, like when we're sitting in that interview, or maybe there's like something I like to do is for social media, I'll ask, hey, write me a caption for this post, right? Before they ever come in for the interview.
Right.
So what's something that stands out in these individuals that we might be able to see, or maybe we can't? We have to dig a little deeper.
Well, it is tough. And in this day and age, corporations, I'm talking big corporations, are relying more and more on automation to scan resumes, where they create a huge bank. And as a result, they miss all these nuances. But it's the nuances that create the culture. Another thing that I don't like what corporations are doing now is they're embedding personality tests into their hiring process. And some of those are good. I mean, there are some jobs where you need a very high IQ.
Right.
And intelligence quotient is one psychological metric, which is very well based in literature. And it's been around for 100 years. The Army's been using it for 100 years to select candidates. But other things, culture is almost impossible to define. And it's also very subject to observer bias. So it can depend on the responses you get from candidates might depend on the mood or whether they've had their coffee in the morning or not. But corporations are relying on these to define their culture. And I think it's just very dangerous, but also very inefficient. There's no replacing just good judgment from good leaders. And if as an organization, if you have good leaders who are have experienced the world and are in touch with their own feelings and their own experiences as humans, they will recognize passions within other individuals. And if they're not able to do that, you need to think about what kind of leaders you have in your organization. And I would also say that as candidates for jobs, candidates can smell these things in big organizations. So when they see a big organization and that organization has not empowered their hiring managers, their leaders, to detect these kinds of cultural values within their employees, an employee knows that. And then that sets a tone where that leader is no longer empowered within that organization to be the leader that they should be.
Oh, so good.
Good.
Travis, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Whitney.
So Travis Klavohn Employee Benefits, if someone wants to reach out to you, work with you, how do they do that?
50cubits.com.
Okay.
50 cubits is the width of Noah's Ark, by the way.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. I picked up on the cubits. I knew that was boat talk. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
See you next time on The Jungle.